Hello there, AP Human Geography students. This is Mr. Brown. Going to teach you today all about the station activities. These are little extra things that I usually do in the class and a lot of kind of activities, but it's online learning, so we're going to do it sort of like a lecture. So there we go. We're doing this. Just pretend like this is a standard note-taking lesson. It's just, this is kind of all over the place, and it's just little filler stuff all about culture. So, yep, take some notes. Take notes. Do it. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about in the station activities is the most contentious city in the world. And it's got to be the city of Jerusalem in the country of Israel today. And Jerusalem today is a really big city, but there is a part of Jerusalem collectively known as the Old City. It was, what the city looked like thousands of years ago, had a big old wall around it. And the Old City of Jerusalem has some really important human geography that I'm just going to demand that you kids learn and know. So I recommend you do your best to you don't have to get all the streets and all the little buildings, but definitely copy the general shape of the city of Jerusalem and definitely highlight the quarters, the 4 different quarters in the city. Also know where some of the main monuments are, and I'll point those out right now. So the things you really got to know in the city of Old Jerusalem is the Temple Mount right here and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre right here. So these 2 spots are hugely important to the major religions of the world. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is the spot where Jesus Christ was crucified and the spot where Jesus was buried and came back to life. They kind of put it all in one super giant church. So Christians love that spot, and every Easter there's this huge Christian prayer group that goes to the exact place Jesus was and prays there. And then over here, this giant raised platform is known as the Temple Mount, and way back 2,000 years ago, the Jewish people built their temple at the center of this mount, and the Jewish people believe that this is the only spot on planet Earth where God will talk to them. And so many Jewish people desire to rebuild their temple because, this is now the Jewish state and Jerusalem is the capital. But the problem is that about 600 years ago, more than 600 years ago, the original Jewish temple was destroyed. And then 600 years ago, the Muslims moved into Jerusalem, and they found this big empty spot right here in the Temple Mount. So they built this huge mosque called the Dome of the Rock, and it's sort of connected to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, so it's sort of like 2 mosques in one. So the Muslims of the world have kind of repurposed this space as a super-duper mosque. And that instance of itself is causing a huge rift between the Jewish people of the world and the Muslim people of the world. And Jewish people want to rebuild their temple. Muslim people never want to let this awesome mosque go. So this is, if any kid has a solution to this, you'll win a Nobel Peace Prize, I'm sure of that. And still to this day, Jewish people are not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. So the place they're kind of relegated to praying is this one open space along the Temple Mount called the Wailing Wall. And every single day you'll find Jewish people there getting as close as they can to their connection to God. I think it's also interesting to notice how within the Muslim quarter there are several famous churches. You don't have to know the names of these churches, but it's interesting that Christian churches exist in the Muslim quarter, but it is important to know that Muslims also venerate Jesus Christ. He is one of the prophets of Islam, according to the Islamic faith. The Armenian Quarter, they've also got some churches in there too. And the Jewish Quarter, even though this city was founded by Jews, and it is the capital of the Jewish state, the Jewish Quarter is the smallest quarter of Old Jerusalem. And it just sort of shows you how over the centuries, these other religions kind of merged into Jerusalem and left their lasting legacy on it. And the fact that all this is so close together, I think the whole Old City is only like a mile, okay? So all this stuff is really, really close to each other. And it's causing some issues in how we treat each other in this city. So definitely the city of Jerusalem and its human geography. Important stuff to know. All right. Next up, cultural appropriation. Oh man, this is a huge topic, and I'm filming this right before Halloween is starting, so this is a current issue as always. So cultural appropriation is when a dominant culture misuses elements from a minority culture and it doesn't demonstrate cultural understanding. It's often used as a way to mock minority cultures, enforce negative stereotypes, and I have friends from all cultures all over the world, and I've definitely brought up this concept where it's like, hey, I'm a white dude. If I use chopsticks, is that cultural appropriation? And look, everyone is going to say no, but it depends how you use them. Are you using the chopsticks in a way that you're like, trying to show Asian styles of culinary art, and are you trying to be really nice and respectful about it? Or are you filming a video to post on TikTok where you're like being a loser and like throwing the chopsticks around and being like, oh, this is silly, give me a fork and a knife. Like, if you're that kind of person, then you're doing cultural appropriation. So really, the way that I understand this is it always is just going to come down to your intentions, and are you trying to utilize cultural elements to either gain a laugh or to show general misunderstanding about it? Like, are you being respectful when you wear or utilize or show off other cultures? Because look, I've collected stuff in my travels around the world. I've got this African painting in my room. I've got I don't know. I've got all kinds of stuff from around the world. And sometimes some of my friends say like, "Oh, Corey, you simply having that painting is cultural appropriation." I'm like, "No, it's not. Like, I think that painting is super cool. Like, I paid the guy a lot of money for that painting. I'm happy I have it. I feel more educated because of it." But if you're like these two dudes and you're wearing mohawks and you're like, "What up, bro? Give me a Bud Light." Like, if that's your attitude, you're clearly not showing respect to the Native American faith. And also, yeah, with so many Halloween costumes, a lot of people are like, "Look at me, I'm this other culture, I'm silly." That's cultural appropriation. But if you do wear clothes of another culture and you really do try to show understanding and respect for that culture, then I don't think you're in this world. And yeah, this guy is from this festival that happens every year in the Netherlands where white people wear blackface. It's really bad. I don't even remember what it's called, but it's serious levels of cultural appropriation. All right, moving on. So, distance decay. This is a concept that sort of keeps coming up again and again in human geo, but it's saying that it's really difficult for a cultural trait to travel across long distances quickly. It's usually whenever you find a cultural element, you can sort of like create borders for how far it will go. Some great examples of that are In-N-Out Burger. Will you find In-N-Out Burger all over the western United States? Yes. Will you find it on the East Coast? No. And that's just because In-N-Out Burger started in California and it's kind of made its way across the west, but it's still got further to go to the east. And one thing I will say, though, as far as when you really evaluate cultural traits, distance decay isn't as big of an issue in the modern world anymore. Because technology and information is just flowing so fast, we don't have to sort of wait around for something to show up in our community. We can just log in online and boom, oh, look at this new idea or this new concept. I've already found some of my adult friends are using the word sus instead of suspicious, which shows the cultural blending of the language coming from the video game Among Us. I think that's so funny. But let me analyze these two pictures here. So this main picture here is the distance decay of world religions. So we can see that Islam started in Mecca, and it just kind of contagiously went out in all directions, but Islam never quite made it super far into Europe or into sub-Saharan Africa that much, so the distance away from Mecca definitely discouraged its spread. It's the same thing with Buddhism. Like, Buddhism is all over East Asia, but distance was probably the biggest limiting factor, spreading it to Europe, Africa, or the Americas. And then here's this other one, the popularity of K-pop. So K-pop is obviously really popular all over Asia, not as big of a deal in India or the Arab world, and it's almost non-existent in sub-Saharan Africa. But K-pop is poppin' in America and Mexico, and I would argue that America and Mexico are really far away, but technology is what is now spreading that cultural concept of Korean pop music, and its distance isn't as big of a deal as it used to be. All right, let's talk about gender. Gender, and specifically in the roles of this course, is a culture's assumptions about what men are supposed to do, what women are supposed to do. The roles they're supposed to play in society, what they represent in society, and really, like, the way that human geography really looks at gender is it's like, who's doing the work, okay? Like, if women are stuck at home and they're not working, they're probably not going to have a lot of political power. They're not going to have the ability to create their own businesses, to really rise through the ranks of society. So it's sort of like step one is getting women working. And let's look at this. So there's a couple things I really want to comment on in this map. So here, this map shows you the darker the color, the more women are participating in the workplace. So it looks like the Western world has a whole bunch of women participating in the workplace, so that's super cool. And then second place is probably sub-Saharan Africa. You probably wouldn't have expected that. But yeah, there's a whole lot of women working in sub-Saharan Africa. And then Mexico and some Latin American countries, there's really not a lot of women working. And the Arab world and India and some of developing Asia, there's really like no women working at all. And the Far East, it looks like there's a good amount of women working here too, but I think it goes the West, then Sub-Saharan Africa, then Far East. So that's interesting because we usually don't see Sub-Saharan Africa topping any lists. But then I want to show you this other map here. So this shows you, are women allowed to do the same jobs as men? And so when we compare these two charts together, we see that France is weirdly anti-women. Didn't expect that from you, France. But it looks like the rest of the Western world is pretty cool with women doing all the same jobs men do. But there's a lot of these sub-Saharan African countries that won't let women do all the same jobs men can do. And that's super messed up because Sub-Saharan Africa has such a high number of women participating in the labor force. And especially I'm looking at the country of the Congo. So what does this mean if the Congo says most of our women are working, but we don't let women do the same jobs as men? It's sort of implying that women are regulated to lower levels of work. They're not allowed to become bosses and managers and all that. So that's super duper messed up. I mean, the map with the Middle East makes sense, but then the Far East, this doesn't make almost any sense either. Like China, South Korea, Japan, it looks like they have good numbers of women working, but all of them are deep in the pink here, saying we will not allow women to have the same opportunities as men. And I remember when I was living in South Korea, there were some laws that were like, men can start a business, men can be a manager, men can do this, and women were really discouraged from taking leadership roles, and I think that's super messed up. Okay, empower the ladies. It'll push you closer to being a stage 4 or possibly stage 5 country, but stage 5 is bad, so keep it all in stage 4. All right, that's what's up. Okay, so, and yeah, let me keep talking about gender stuff, because there is a lot of things in the Human Geography course description saying, like, talk about the treatment of women, talk about gender. So I'm going to make the argument that the hardest place to be a girl is Saudi Arabia. And I befriended a Saudi prince when I was in South Korea, and he had 4 wives, and he never actually introduced me to his wives directly. I only heard them talking in the other room. But my full understanding is to be a woman in Saudi Arabia is just rough, okay? And a lot of these are, current laws in the country of Saudi Arabia. Women need a guardian approval before they can get married. So if you want to get married, you got to get your dad's permission. Women also require a male or a husband or their father to travel abroad, so you can't even leave the country on your own accord. Saudi laws almost never award custody of children to their mothers during a divorce. So if there is something going wrong with your husband, husband keeps the kids. That's pretty wild. Saudi women who are physically abused by their fathers or husbands almost never get awarded independence. And in so many ways, women are sort of considered property. And I think that's super duper messed up. And in the year 2018, Saudi women were finally given the right to drive cars by themselves. So that happened like 2 years ago. It's definitely, I'm going to argue, the least gender equality country in the world today, and they're one of the richest countries in the world today. They got all that oil money, so it's taken time for gender politics to catch up to that country. But things are getting better as women are now able to drive, which is cool. They still got a long way to go. Okay, and now let's talk about being a homosexual. There's certain parts of the world where it is very, very illegal to be openly gay, and there's some places that they will give you the death penalty for expressing romantic interest in the same sex. Thankfully, let's look at the regions of the world here. Looks like the whole Western world, it's okay to be gay. High five, big fan of everybody who's in the LGBTQ lifestyle. Thumbs up to y'all. The former Soviet Union. I mean, I always thought Putin was kind of like anti-gay, but I guess the former Soviet Union is okay with the gay people. The Far East is okay with gay people. Most of Latin America is okay with gay people, but it looks like the Arab world and parts of sub-Saharan Africa and little pieces of developing Asia, especially looks like the countries that have mostly Muslim kind of religion, they are not cool with you being gay. So if you are a part of the LGBTQ community, I'm just going to say don't go to the Arab world, okay? Just don't run the risk. Because if you make out with your same gender, and it looks like Afghanistan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, or Mauritius, it's the death penalty for you. So that's rough. Yeah. But I do know that as time has gone on, countries are becoming more and more open to LGBTQ lifestyles. And I think also you can make a pretty good connection between if you're moving up the demographic transition model, because it looks like just about all stage 4 countries in the world, stage 4, stage 5, are totally cool with the gays. So it's okay to be gay. Thumbs up. Just stay in the Western world, okay? That's my recommendation. All right, now let's talk about a language map of Nigeria. Nigeria is the most populated country in Africa, and count the languages that are spoken in this country. It looks like there's maybe a dozen, and these 12 languages, when there's so many different languages spoken in a country, it generally does not equal stability. Language is the most important aspect of culture, and if you can't even talk to the people who live in the south part of your country, you're not really going to want to make laws with them, you're not really going to want to share power with them, it'll cause some conflict. And I know in recent years, Nigeria has had some pretty big political difficulties, so much so that they decided to move the capital city to try to accommodate some of these different language groups and different ethnic groups. So I just want you kids to memorize it in your head that if your whole country speaks one language, you are always going to be more united than if your country speaks 100 languages. Definitely hard to get people to work together when they can't talk to each other. Okay, so now this is another super cool map. What do you call soft drinks? So they asked that question to people all over the USA, and surprisingly enough, everybody had some different answers. So it looks like the choices were, when I say, what do you call a soft drink? People will either say pop, Coke, or soda. And it's pretty significant along state lines. So it looks like the southern states will call it Coke, the northern states will call it pop, and then the western states and New England will call it soda. And then there's some other places, like there's a bunch of soda people in like Missouri. There's some soda people in Wisconsin. So this is just a really interesting map to me. But this is a great concept of the isogloss. And the isogloss is sort of like drawing borders from how language is used in different ways. But hey, it looks like in Nevada we actually got all the different names of soft drinks here. So, but officially in Vegas we call it soda, which is the right choice. All you pop people, get out of here. We don't call it pop. You're wrong. Go back to Michigan. All right, moving on. All right, so I want you to know the cultural realms of the world. So I would just recommend you try your best to copy this map in a really quick, unofficial way. And a lot of this corresponds with my regions of the world that we've talked about so many times. But this map defines the regions in a little different way, and I think it's cool to notice. So the Anglo-American region of the world is just us and Canada. Latin America, same way I defined it. The European part of the world is just another section of the West. Australia, European, also part of the West. The Islamic world, I call that the Arab world, which almost are totally correlated. Sub-Saharan Africa, same. This map calls it the Slavic world when I called it the former Soviet Union. And then they don't call it the Far East, they call it Sino-Japanese, but Korea's in there too, and Koreans would hate to be not mentioned. Southeast Asia and the Indic region, I would collectively call developing Asia, but they call it these names. So just be aware of these other names if they ever come up on a test or something, and just, one more map to know where the regions of the world are. All right, early cultural hearths. So where did human culture begin? And there are, what does this look like? 8 choices for you here. Okay, so the 8 places where culture began are Mesoamerica, functionally Mexico, the Andes Mountains in Peru, Western Africa, also known as the West African Kingdoms, the Nile River Valley in Egypt, Mesopotamia, that's modern-day Iraq, the Indus River, modern-day Pakistan, India, the Ganges River, modern-day Bangladesh and India, and then the Yellow River Valley in China. And what's kind of cool is right around the year 10,000 BC, human civilizations popped up in all 8 of these spots, kind of spontaneously. And another thing I want you to notice, like, leave the Andes Mountains out of this observation, so pretend this one doesn't exist. What do all of the other 7 spots have in common? They're all very close to the same latitude line. And actually, the Andes aren't that far off. And so many of these places are located just above the equator. And that's because there's really consistent weather. Okay, with the exception of the Andes, none of these spots on planet Earth have snowfall. There might be snowfall in the Yellow River. But they're all pretty consistent temperatures, good access to the coast. They're all located by really big rivers. So it made sense that these are all the places where civilization started in planet Earth. So what do you got? You got a good spot on planet Earth. You're right above the equator. You got a big old river. You got crops you can grow consistently. So this is where human cultures collectively began. All right. And here's another comment that I really have to make and emphasize that is brought up quite a bit in human geography. It's humanity will do damage to the environment. Okay, there's no example of a human culture that was completely eco-friendly and completely 100% recyclable and all that other stuff. And so many human civilizations throughout world history, especially when we talk about like 10,000 BC to the year 0, so many of them destroyed themselves. Half of all human civilizations that have ever existed failed because of environmental collapse. And was that collapse always caused by humans? No. There were many examples of earthquakes and floods and other big disasters that killed just about everybody who lived in a early civilization. But a lot of civilizations also did fail because they did not manage their relationship with nature. A great example of that is the civilization on Easter Island in the Pacific Ocean. Those people, they all died, and all that's left are these big statues they made. They cut down all the trees on their island, and then they couldn't grow any food or eat anything or even make boats to sail off the island. They made some bad mistakes. And something that archaeologists have consistently found is when we see these early civilizations that existed thousands of years ago, just a couple years of inconsistent rain, and they can't grow crops, it just spelled doom for these people. So the lesson that we should really learn from half of all the cultures on planet Earth is don't mess with Mother Nature. Okay? This concept of ecocide, of genociding your environment. Don't do it. Be nice to Mother Earth. All right. Here's another sort of supplement to my station's activities. It's pretty cool that if you spoke, these 4 languages: Mandarin, English, Urdu, Hindi, that's functionally one language, and Spanish. So you speak English, Spanish, Mandarin, and Urdu, Hindi. You speak those languages, you can talk to more than half of all the people on planet Earth. That's cool. And also, by knowing Spanish, you can functionally communicate in Italian and Portuguese. And if you know Mandarin, especially written Mandarin, then you can have a written communication with all the other Chinese languages. So that'll push you all the way up to being able to speak to 67% of people on planet Earth. So 2 out of every 3 people you can have a full-on conversation with if you just knew those 4 languages. That's pretty cool. So get it, kids. Learn them. Learn all 4 of those. Don't make Mr. Brown's mistake and learn Korean. It's not super helpful in the international stage. Should have gone to China instead and learned me some Mandarin. All right, that's it for this slide. Moving on. Okay, so this slide's all in blue, so you don't have to copy every word, just kind of get the gist of it. But a big question that is commonly asked is, why doesn't the USA have an official language? Because officially, the United States has no official language. And you're like, what? Like, it's English. Like, the answer to that question has got to be English. And here's what it comes down to. The United States chose to not have an official language in order to not show any preference to any of the original 13 colonies. Because when our country was founded, there were all these different languages spoken in the many English colonies. Like Pennsylvania's big language was German. I don't remember which colony, but they spoke Welsh. I think Rhode Island spoke a whole lot of Irish. There were a whole lot of Dutch people still in New York. So there were all these different languages present in our country right from the beginning. And once we made our Constitution, we're like, you know what? We're not going to make anything official, because if we do that, we'll sort of like oppress these minority language groups in the United States. And we're just going to make it law that every single government entity, so we're talking about like when you vote on a ballot, or when you like take a driver's license test, or if you want to get your passport, somebody in the government will work with you to have your major languages of your community represented. You can participate in our government in whatever language you prefer. So that's super cool. That really defines our character as a nation of immigrants, and we're encouraging anybody to participate in our government if they can speak English or not. But let's be real. The lingua franca of the United States has always been English. It's English right now. Here I am teaching at a public school in Nevada, and I'm teaching it in English. But I think if you ever got super technical and you said, give me a public school in whatever language you want, there should be a government mandate to provide you an education in the language you prefer. I think that would be kind of a disservice to you, though, because English is the lingua franca, and you got to speak that to get into colleges, and the government doesn't have to put you into college. So, just know that we do not have an official language, and it's because we want to help out all the immigrants. So that's pretty great. All right, I think that's it for stations. Peace out.